Thank you everyone for being here, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. It's a pleasure to have you all here. About 18 years ago, if I wanted to take anybody here for business lunch, we would have to have wads of cash. But now, the innovation that's happened in that space is so immense. Last year, the NABE said that across all electronic channels in Nigeria, the transaction volume was a quadrillion.
So it always makes me reflect that although things have changed so much.
But then in this fintech space, they face real trade-offs. And that's why at CloudReady Nigeria Breakfast, we want to move beyond buzzwords to critically analyze what cloud readiness means for Nigeria, how to architect systems that balance sovereignty with scalability, how to embed compliance by design into everything that we do, and how to ensure resilience, performance, and ultimately AI readiness.
The future is not too far off again. What we would have then will then be AI-driven infrastructure, AI-maintained infrastructure, AI co-workers even in your office. Service quality will overall improve, and it will be a beautiful future.
Conversations like this make us, an ecosystem, as a country, stay ahead of the curve, innovate responsibly, and scale smartly. Thank you, God bless, and safe trip back to your destinations.
Thank you for being here. Honestly, it's going to be a thought-provoking, exciting morning for us all. So let's sit back, relax, and get ready to engage and participate. At this time, I'll be calling on Temitope Ayorinde. Oshunrinde. Sorry. Temitope Oshunrinde, Director at Africa Hyperscalers, to deliver his welcome address. You can't fire me here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rosemary. I cannot fire you, but hold your mouth. Jokes aside. Thank you all. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. It's a pleasure to have you all here at the CloudReady Nigeria Breakfast. And I'll do a bit of reflection. So about 16, 17 years, 18 years ago, if I wanted to take anybody here for a lunch, business lunch, we would have to have wads of cash to pay for that lunch. I'm sure a lot of us may not remember that, but that was the reality then. Transactions that we do today, effortlessly without thinking, were things that were very unthinkable then. But now, the innovation that's happened in that space is so immense. The volumes of transaction we're seeing with some of the operators in this room is historic. Last year, the NABE said that across all electronic channels in Nigeria, the transaction volume was a quadrillion, which is 1 million billion. And that's not stopping. We have more innovations. Operators are experimenting with touch pay. We have operators experimenting with so much. And then there's so much happening in this space. And we know that what is powering this innovation is obviously infrastructure, cloud, and infrastructure. But then this fintech space, they face real trade-offs. They face trade-offs around remaining agile while complying with evolving local requirements. And we have Nida to shed some light on what's happening in that space. How do you optimize cloud spend without compromising resilience and scale? And then What infrastructure partners do you need on this journey as you go forward? And the very important question, are systems ready, truly ready to scale securely? Are they ready to remain compliant and ultimately keep customer trust, impact? And that's the challenge we will discuss today. And that's why at CloudReady Nigeria Breakfast, we want to move beyond buzzwords to critically analyze what cloud readiness means for Nigeria, how to architect systems that balance sovereignty with scalability, how to embed compliance by design into everything that we do, and how to ensure resilience, performance, and ultimately AI readiness in today's world. And to our speakers who have joined us, thank you, Dr. Tunde Koka, CTO across multiple continents, CEO of Open Access, Mrs. Olushola Denuga, CEO Ola Systems, and one of the first female bank CTOs in Nigeria, Dotun Adekunle, CTO and COO OPE. The transaction volumes by OPE is historic. Chigozie Amajo, CIO NIPS. Benga Pasheda, CEO VFD, the infrastructure behind V Bank. We have some people who are already on their way. Tolu is on their way. Gbemisola is here. Gbemisola, CEO Smart Comply, cyber security expert. Obina is here. Obina, big title, Head Converged Infrastructure Africa, Open Access Data Centers. Deji is almost here. And Temitayo from TechAbal is here. Thank you for today's dialogue. I look forward to a very interesting, very engaging, and very impactful session that can set the course for cloud readiness for Nigeria, not just fintechs, for across all operators. Everybody uses cloud, not just fintechs. So manufacturing, banking, e-commerce, everybody uses cloud. But how we need to now scale that cloud securely, scale our services securely and more efficiently, while balancing the dynamics is what we'll speak about here today. Without much ado, I'll call back Rosemary to continue with the session. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Temitope Osunrinde. You know, it's amazing to see how this, I want to say young man, but he will kill me, but he's still young, has grown in this industry. And I just want to say, you're doing amazing, you and your team. You are really, really, truly inspiring some of us, So ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Mr. Temitope Osunrinde. Right now, we'll just move on to the keynote by the Chief Executive Officer, Open Access Data Centers, Dr. Ayotunde Koka. Dr. Koka will be speaking on scaling securely in a digital-first Nigeria. Welcome, sir.
Okay, good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted and honored to be here to be doing the keynote today while I get the clicker. Thanks. Thank you. As I reflect on some of these times when I'm on a panel or do a keynote and so on, go back 20, 25 years, okay? 25 years ago, I was Digital Services Director at EggBank, the first so really pure digital internet bank in Europe, certainly, but probably the world at the time. And we were just breaking great grounds and so on. So when I was CIO at Axis Bank, and we sort of also, when Axis Bank brought me back here 16 years ago now, we were doing crazy stuff. I said, it's okay, I'm used to it. I used to be at EggBank. We used to do crazy stuff, breaking current ideas and innovation and so on. So it always makes me reflect that although things have changed so much has remained the same over the last 25 years. Platforms are platforms, and some of the diagrams I show here are similar to what I would have done and looked at and models we used 25 years ago. And all of that has been a journey since. In Europe, we've had the single European payments area. In ECOWAS, we've got UAMOA coming up with its own payment systems and so on. But when I go to South Africa and I can use my British Visa card and I just touch contactless payments, it makes me realize just how much more the world has become integrated with payments. Now you can, I mean, it's been amazing what's happened with the Nigerian currency monetary system over the last 24 months, because essentially we have an exchangeable currency, and the payment platform providers will be saying, whoa. So you've probably seen your volumes gone skyrocket, ballistic, and it's, and so many things. But, as long as we go on, so much has changed, but so much has stayed the same. And that will sort of drive what I talk about here. I have to figure out which one is forward gear or reverse gear. While we figure that one out, there's sometimes, okay, there we go, at Egg Bank, we would say everything works in the front, but nobody knows how much manual is going on in the back till you sort it out. But as far as the customer is concerned, it's straight through processing. So I wonder if they've said, if when I click it, a light just comes on and they say, put it forward quickly. So I don't know how automated this is, because it doesn't seem to be following the clicks. Okay, so I'll start. I'll be talking about a background around the sort of the key multidimensional components we have to think about when it comes to cloud first, the mixture of on-premise networks. In those days, when I was CEO of a bank, we used to, my team really used to focus on the detail of networks to understand which networks ride on each other, would do negotiations to pull them into our data center. I didn't have a choice but to build a data center. 16 years ago, you didn't have any data centers in the country that you could collocate to. Over the last 13 years, that's totally changed. Now we have very high quality, world-class data centers. In the last 13 years, things have changed. With those data centers that are carrier neutral, all the carriers go there, and now we have national fabric of fiber that I know would be there. Those days, I used to actually sit down with fiber providers to say, if you take me to Damaturu, you'll get my business in Lagos and Port Harcourt, and it'll be one deal. But if you go down over there, I'll penalize you in Lagos, right? Those things have changed. Now I know I can just move on with the business and change the dynamics. So I'll first talk about very briefly WIOC Group. Just some people know, some people don't know, open access data centers. And then I'll talk about the platforms and a broad framework around how we choose to scale and how the world has changed around scaling on-prem, colo, cloud, international cloud, local cloud, people, processes, and so on. So we have what's called WIOC Group. That's been around for, WIOC, the connectivity company, has been around for 17 years now, building fiber interconnect across Africa, subsea cable capacities. It's invested, a partnership investor with Google's Aquino Cable, which lands here in Lagos data center. Game changer, especially for Nigeria, sort of across Africa. And also Meta's 2 Africa Cable, a consortium partner, the one that's landed in Lekki. We have our equipment in there for that fiber, and West and East Africa. So we started WIOC Group about 3 years ago when OADC went live. OADC has been open access data center has been established for about 5 years now. We went live in Lekki 2.5 years ago, went live in SA about 3 years ago. And under that we have, we'll be building core carrier-neutral data centers across Africa. The Lagos one is our flagship data center and is building out about 24 megawatts. I'll show you the picture in a minute. And under that, we now have what we call Open Access Fabric, which we launched November last year in South Africa. And it's gone live this month in Lagos and in DR Congo. What it means is that you can have seamless, optimized latency between the platforms you have here and the cloud on-ramps, is what they call it. So you directly take the service, you efficiently cross-connect to the front doors or whatever they choose to call it into the cloud, taking out all these hops, internet stuff and everything. So it gives you a platform. It's transformational. It gives you a platform for global, local cloud, and how you choose to progressively migrate and optimize yourself between global cloud and local cloud. So it speaks to a lot of what we're talking about today. Open Access Technology Services is an outsourcing service that provides support services for managed NOC, and so on across Africa. Open Access Metro is very exciting. We're building out Open Access Metro, fiber to X, everything, business, homes, that ISPs can ride on. And we believe ISPs now don't need to get the investment to build infrastructure. They can ride on very high quality, open fiber infrastructure. And what differentiates them? The service to the end customer, a whole range of value propositions and so on, and bring that in together with what's been happening with the MVNOs and so on and so forth. It's really quite transformational. We're in Lagos right now, and we'll look at other options in terms of how we build out the Open Access Metro. So if we move quickly, if I just raise my hand, just move forward. Multiple shareholders, but the key ones, Africa Capital Alliance and International Finance Corporation. We're an African company, but we operate internationally, proudly African, with our ethos and the way we operate internationally, and a good range of shareholders there. Open access data centers, we have a core data center in Lagos. We have one in DRC. The one in DRC is a 1.5 megawatts IT load capacity. It's transformed the ecosystem in Kinshasa. If you haven't been to Kinshasa, go and have a look. It's a bit like Lagos, Example is, oh yeah, but what's going on? And Goma. It's a bit like saying because of Boko Haram, you won't come to Lagos. Kinshasa is a vibrant environment. It's a carrier-neutral data center. It's the first core data center. Now banks and mining companies and all of these people now suddenly thought, oh, fantastic. Thank God for that. We have credible co-location platforms. And in South Africa, one in Durban, which the 2 Africa East Cable lands into, one in Isando, 2 in Cape Town. And we're building out in other locations in Africa. Interestingly, though, in South Africa, we have 30 edge data centers in addition to those 4 core data centers. You see that emerging in Nigeria because we believe that you need to carry the content to the core to distribute it, especially with the sheer scale of the kind of landmass in Nigeria and South Africa and places like that. We call it the core-to-edge strategy. And then when we bring networks, open access wholesale networks in with open access data centers, that's what we call converged open digital infrastructure, which also drives what we do with the open access fabric. So it's sort of what we do, and so I feel that it's good to outline what that means because it's unique. It's unique in Africa, and we're seeing tremendous traction with that. That's what Lagos looks like. That's an actual picture, power systems and the white space, and it's a significant infrastructure. People come around and say it's a game changer. The other thing we realized was last year when the cables broke, right? It was great we were able to let the NCC know, and that's okay. We're actually restoring all of capacity into Equiano cable. So Nigeria did well in surviving the cable breaks of Cote d'Ivoire and West Africa, actually. And we're able to pair that with our Cape Town data center to provide capacity and reduce the stress on the western coast side of Africa. That's when we realized that that's actually the most network resilient data center around the place. And we partner with other data center providers to make sure that we bring a fabric of network and resilience across the Lagos fabric. And certifications I'll talk about again later. These are standards that we have now, more to come, 22301, 45001. You do these things progressively as you build the maturity of the data center. And we're building out to 24 megawatts, and that's what it'll look like ahead of that. It's going to be huge. But we're actually building it in 4 stages, 6, 12, 18, 24. But with the way cloud and AI is going, who knows? 24 might just be small. It was just about 4 years ago, if you have a 10 megawatt data center, that was huge. Now, when you say 24 megawatts, it's kind of normal. So who knows? It might be 50 megawatts by the time we get there. Okay, so from our side, that kind of provides a certain kind of context, because infrastructure has been shifting. And it's not just about open access data centers. There are other key data centers that are building that infrastructure that matters for what everybody here wants to do. And some I have also been part of. So if you look at this slide, it starts to give you a sense of a multi-dimensional opportunity we face, or the reality we face. First of all, you have own systems. People, whether it's co-located or not, on-prem, they build their own systems, buy their own servers, and so on. But the key shift also is that we're now starting to have multi-cloud environments. Some are international, some are local, right? Increasingly local, but the big players all over the world, our situation is not unique. The big players all over the world, our leaders are AWS and Microsoft. And the change has been remarkable. I remember once we had Steve Ballmer at a meeting in the UK about cloud. So look at what AWS is doing. So I'm going to get Microsoft's cloud, blah, blah. Just watch this space. And my God, have they done a transformative work over the last 18 years or so. They're the two largest. And, of course, you have Oracle Cloud. You have Google Cloud Platform. And so you have a situation of multiple international clouds that you need to interoperate with, and that's where that OA fabric comes into work, right? Because you can have an arrangement that allows you to cross into multiple international cloud providers. Then you have the local cloud providers. They're growing. The data center infrastructure providers here know that we're getting increasing numbers of local cloud providers, and we're getting increasing sophistication and reliability of those cloud platforms over here in Nigeria. And of course, connect, that's interconnect, that's connectivity, fiber connectivity, open connectivity. It's now significantly improved. There's the 90,000 kilometer fiber project that's ongoing right now. That is going to be another layer on transforming fiber-based interconnectivity. But you know what they say about connectivity? It's meaningful broadband that really matters. So don't care how you get me there with meaningful broadband, just get me there. So you get a mix of radio, fiber, satellite, and so on. However, if you do not have a core backbone of fiber, you lose the strength of national connectivity fabric somewhere, right? And the red circle, I'm going to be suffering this some. The red circle at the bottom, there's data centers. Okay, now, why the data centers? You have a choice with data centers. You collocate or you outsource. Now, when it comes to agility, what all of these things now mean is that 10 years ago, I can understand why, 12 years ago, why someone might build one. I built one when I was Group CI at Access Bank. I didn't have a choice, right? But it was the first Tier 3 design data center in banking. Actually, only one in South Africa, out of Africa. It was there to build the scale of the bank. I didn't want to do it. It was a lot of capital. When the bank needed capital for capital adequacy, to put capital into the branches we have, into investments. But we had to divert that. And then, of course, maintaining it. I had to keep up skill set. My wife then called me director of diesel, because you realize, I had a huge breakdown once. I'm going to be in charge of my own entire diesel value chain for technology. I don't care about how you do with other buildings, branches, but I will own that. And then I realized and got into how that value chain works, right? And that basis actually has become how data centers operate in the mix of diesel and technology now, going back about sort of the 15 years. But I didn't want to do that. My job was to strategically expand the bank, engage with the front end of the business to transform the business and transform banking around here. And but I knew if I didn't secure my back-end infrastructure, I had a problem. So these days, I really just say to people, if you think you get any kudos from building a data center, forget it. You know why? You're also reducing the agility of the business, right? Or the scalability of speed of scalability of the business. Because we've got 10 racks. That's a medium-sized bank. Say 30 racks is a big bank, and you need to add 10 racks. You start doing capital expenditure requests, and it goes to the exco. Exco is now discussing racks and building walls. Which wall are you going to break down? When the conversation in exco has got to be business risk, it's got to be business growth, business agility. That's why I say in this day and age, the excos that sit down to discuss building down a wall to do capex for a data center, they're discussing the wrong things, and that means they're doing the wrong things in other areas, and it usually affects the scalability of the company, the agility of the company, the efficiency of the company. And I put sustainability there for one reason, right? It's not just about sustainability of the environment. It's also about the sustainability of the business. And those two things go hand in hand. And if strategically you're allowing yourself to be misguided by your technology people, smell the coffee. You're talking about the wrong things. So the job of a CEO now has changed so much in every industry in the world. I speak to CEOs and I say, if you're a CEO, you understand the financial, your balance sheets, your income statements, and all of that, yeah? You understand the legal frame, but you have a CFO, okay? You have your legal frameworks and everything, and your legal risks and everything. Yeah, you have a legal person, chief risk officer, because you need to put all of these things. You don't do it yourself. And they say, that IT problem, I don't know IT. I'm a live banker, or a live whatever. My head of IT will do this. Now, sometimes when I speak to a head of IT and I see them run under the thing, look at the wire under the table, I think, no, yeah, you are an infrastructure lead, manager. The behaviors show these things. CIOs should think big, think the business, set the strategy, drive things forward, and that includes the CEO of the company. Because when your technology breaks, you die. So I wanted to use this as the context. And the challenge for businesses is that a lot of these things are now our own systems. Why own systems? Sometimes you do need it because for that need is cheaper. It's a lower scale infrastructure required, but you're mixing it with colocation that you have. But typically, actually, cloud arrangements that you have. But around that, you have the challenge of federated security. I call it federated security because it's a huge challenge to secure your enterprise, to secure your entire landscape of all these moving parts of multiple global, local platforms. Okay. So very quickly, if you look at this component on overlaid or underlaid, underpinning what I talked about in the infrastructure stuff, is the platforms people say people, processes, technology, right? People and process are so important because even if you have a tier 4 data center went down sometime a while ago. Why? Because they had issues with their process and the people. So it's no point having all these certificates. Your people and process are key and the final lock into how you operate efficiently. The platforms, you don't need to build new platforms unless, of course, you're intending to disrupt. It's going to be a disrupting platform of functionality that ties in, cuts out the middleman, it disintermediates, it drives efficiency, grabs the eyeballs, makes a unique value proposition into the market. Else, you just adopt your platforms, right? Infrastructure, I've discussed, people, processes, and, of course, technology. I need to move quick and round up now. I've shown this before, but the reason I show this is that the bottom there is just showing a whole range of propositions of platform providers, MNOs, MVNOs, the banking platforms, and so on. Because these days you pull everything from everywhere. I kind of look at the fintechs, I go, yeah, because that's the way you get agility. You pull in what you don't have to do. You integrate it effectively, and you own the eyeballs. And some things might not work, but you can pivot so quickly. That's the way things work these days. If you get your key core infrastructure wrong, that's a problem, or your application engines. And so you tend to find that actually you also have what I call a multidimensional regulatory or supervisory environment. Because you're not just a bank, you're also doing stuff around connectivity and communications and so on. So you then find yourself, of course, you got the consumer regulators or supervisors and stuff like that. So you have a multi-dimensional regulatory environment, and that's what this creates out there. I'm now going to just summarize things I've spoken to in some slides over here. The customer is king. Drive everything through customer experience, whatever you do. If you're oil and gas, banking, core banking, fintech, or whatever, when you do that, it's a profound change in how you think. And it's also the case, like when you build security, trust. If you lose trust, you lose your client base. And that usually actually gets linked to customer experience. And using other technologies right now that are becoming more available, finger vein supports fingerprinting for security in different usage scenarios. You need to start to think to innovate in that way. Manage your core infrastructure platforms with scalable business model and emerging trends, digital currencies, and so on. And key innovation anchors. I just talk briefly on AI. The change AI is now able to bring, because you have very flexible infrastructure platforms, is really quite profound. So in banking, for instance, look at risk management, look at credit risk management. You can take a lot of information from different sources and use that to make very, very quick decisions. It's not going to take away the jobs of the risk people and the credit providers and so on. It just means that they can go to markets they never thought they'll have before, because they can do proper credit risk assessment and so on in a fraction of the time they used to be able to, right? Looking at customer service, being able to deal with customer service, agentic AI coming through. Looking at dealing with treasury management, stop loss, decision making. We used to put systems in place that worked on that. But what happens if you overlay AI on that? It means that your decision making on treasury can be totally transformed. And I've talked about the multi-regulatory environment. You face a whole new set of risks as you start to take on this kind of flexible infrastructure. And so on. So I hope this has given us a whole range of directions of, how you get agility, sustainability, how you get scalability, and in a risk-managed environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I might not know you as the director of Diesel, but I know you as a doyen in this industry. One of the most prominent faces. Thank you so much for all you're doing and all you've done. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Dr. Ayatunde Koka. We're now moving on to the first panel session titled Scaling Smart, Navigating Cloud, Compliance, and Cost in Nigeria's Fintech Ecosystem. We have an exciting lineup of panelists who will bring, wealth of knowledge and hands-on experience on this discussion. Now, I'll be introducing them very shortly, starting with our first distinguished speaker. Ms. Olushola Adenuga is a trailblazer in African technology, bringing together deep technical expertise and financial insight with academic credentials in computer science, economics, and finance. Her career began in the banking sector, where she rose to senior leadership roles, including CIO across multiple institutions. During this time, she pioneered end-to-end financial technology solutions well before cloud technology became mainstream, developing mission-critical systems for accounting, forex, and payroll. She also champions tech inclusion via Ola Foundation, which supports women in tech through scholarships, mentorships, and has a decade of experience. She's now expanding her vision beyond Africa, growing Ola Systems' presence in Dubai and the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Olushola Adenuga, Chief Executive Officer, Ola Systems. Second on the list is Oladejo Olawumi, Director of Infrastructure Solutions, National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA. Mr. Oladejo Olawumi is the Director of IT Infrastructure Solutions at NIDA. He holds a National Diploma in Electrical Electronics Engineering from Kwara State Polytechnics, a BSc in Computer Science from the University of Ilorin, and a Master's in Communications Management from Buckinghamshire New University, UK. With a career spanning top IT firms like Scarnet ISP, Olaomi joined NIDA in 2003 after completing the Shell Intensive Training Program at the Robert Gordon University, Aberdeen. He also served with UNESCO as National Program Officer, coordinating ICT strategies across 8 West African countries. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Oladejo Olawomi. Third on the list is Dotun Adekunle, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Technology Officer, OPE. Dotun Adekunle is based in Nigeria. Is currently the Chief Operating Officer and CTO at OPE, one of the 4 major fintech companies in Nigeria. He brings experience from previous roles at CMYK Studios, Flutterwave, and OPE, with a robust skill set that includes Flash, PHP, electronic funds transfer, e-learning, and more. He's an alumni of the University of Roehampton and the Texas McCombs School of Business. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dotun Adekunle. And then we have Chigozie Amajo, Acting CIO, Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, NIBS. With over a decade of experience in software testing, quality assurance, and product management, Chigozie is a self-motivated, detail-oriented, and results-driven leader. She has strong command of the full software development lifecycle and proven expertise in requirement gathering and analysis, web service integration support, text management, and incident resolution. Her specialties span across functional integration system and user accepting testing, alongside product innovation, change management, and service request fulfillment. Ladies and gentlemen, Chigozie Amajo, Acting CIO, Nigeria Interbank Settlement System. And of course, Dr. Ayotunde Koka is the moderator for the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I'd say welcome on the stage to all distinguished, a very distinguished panel members that we have today. So thanks very much for doing the introduction, so we can just go straight into the matter at hand. So the other thing we actually haven't met to say we'll ask you this question, we'll ask you that question, and so on. So we're going to, because of the depth and breadth of experience that we have here, so we'll go through a whole range of areas around how we achieve that scalability, the agility, local, global, and so on. So welcome. So I'd like to start with Mr. Olusola Adenuga around in building really the formidable platform you have over the years. How have you seen that mix of global cloud platforms, local cloud platforms? How has it worked out? And the mix between that, that global local, or if you've used them at scale, for instance.
Thank you very much. It's quite interesting, and listening to you and looking back a number of years. I've been in IT for like 40 years. Worked in various banks. I wish we have all the facilities we have today then. If you ask me, it's of no use bothering about having your own infrastructure today. A few years ago, I was just thinking about the company, and we're looking at cloud services. Again, you don't want to be, like you said, director of diesel, director of this, having to run a data center. I'm quite impressed with what has happened, thus far. There are various levels. The competition is very stringent. You have the network, apart from the Tier 3, Tier 4 data centers. Very good setup. You have also the network providers. Then you now have the people providing infrastructure, which we do as a company. And then you now have people managing the infrastructure, which we do. I think today there are quite a lot of things available for any fintech or even any company today to set up and scale and be agile. I think there's no excuse these days on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chigozie, can I get your view around this. How you're involved in a business and a platform that's, Temi was saying earlier, has scaled hugely in terms of volumes of transactions in not that long a period of time. How do you deal with the infrastructure scalability challenges to meet that demand?
Okay, thank you. For us, the way we deal with it is to ensure that we build microservices. We ensure that there's security first, and then we also do a lot of infrastructure as code. We imbibe on things like Kubernetes to ensure that at least during the high volume times, we can scale out and scale back in. So we make sure our applications are always that resilient. So that's how we are able to manage the infrastructure costs here at NIBS. Thank you.
How have you seen that you're sort of a barometer of the banking industry, because something goes through you, something happens somewhere, it touches you along the line, yes. And that must put a significant amount of pressure on industry uptime and platform risk management, and so on. What keeps you awake? How do you sleep? And how you deal with that?
That's a good question. Everyone keeps asking, how do we sleep? So once you're compliant, once you have your security measures put in place, and then once you ensure that your platforms are resilient, I know in the past few months, we had some issues with downtime. And we realized that we had something called Redis. It was not, we just had to scale up on the Redis and have an enterprise infrastructure so that we ensure that whenever we ensure that we have a full active implementation so that we can always be up. So that's how we try to sleep at night, by making sure that we monitor. Monitoring has to be automated as well.
And there's so much even that we can discuss on that part. We won't go into that aspect of architecture on that active because of time. Do you see any opportunities with the cloud platforms, global cloud platforms, to get that kind of scale and agility? Because you're very unique in the platform you provide.
Right, yes, we actually run on the cloud. Some of our applications run on the cloud currently. But we had to ensure that those applications were actually cloud ready in order to reduce costs. Because I think in Nigeria, some people feel that just carrying one application and doing a lift and shift to the cloud makes you cloud ready. But we had to learn the hard way. So, so right now we make sure that we build microservices. We make sure that those services can auto scale. And then we make sure that there's always compliance first, right? And then there's always security as well. It needs to be embedded in that.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. And Dr. Coming to you, you've created an iconic brand in time in such a short scale. That means actually that you've brought a huge amount of agility into. Comparatively, you've brought a huge amount of agility in your value propositions to customers, in your back-end platform, right, systems. How have you achieved that in the environment that we have in right now, and where do you see some of that going?
All right, thank you, Doctor. I think that during your presentation, one of the things that I saw there, which very much aligns with our core values at OPay, is having a customer-first mindset. So when you have that kind of mindset, it forces you to take things to, basically you take the bull by the horn and you go the extra mile to put whatever it's going to cost you to make sure that as far as the customer is concerned, service is available. So if you have to build redundant systems, if you have to connect to multiple providers, if you have to build out infrastructure, if you have to look at multiple cloud providers, whatever it is that needed to be done, as far as the customer is served, even though it's expensive for you, we decided that was the approach we were going to take. And in the initial period, of course, it was looking like so much cost, very expensive. This does not pay you. But we now see that down the line, after a few years, you then become the top player because you've done the investment upfront and you've made those hard calls earlier on. So that's been our approach.
It's amazing. It's paying dividends because anecdotal evidence sort of works sometimes. So I finished playing a round of golf, and increasingly when I ask someone, I'll pay you for your being a caddy, give me your account number, which bank? Increasingly, it's OPay, right? And you see that change happening so significantly. There's something working there. And one of the things that we say also is that people tend to think, okay, I have my primary here, I have my secondary here, and that's that for your infrastructure. But we say, actually, you can add significantly more resilient by underpinning your core, right, at another location. And it looks like it's the kind of thing that you've been looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Latency is, for instance, is something that is super important to any infrastructure provisioning. You want to make sure that the amount of time between the travel time of your transactions is as low as possible. And no better way to achieve that than to keep your core close to home as much as is possible. When we started out, our core infrastructure was in Ireland, Dublin, blah, blah, blah. And we were looking for how to improve performance. And then we changed providers and moved down to South Africa. It was closer home. It was improving our latency. But we still went further and having most of our low latency required infrastructure local, so that it's in Nigeria, it's in country, so that amount of time is really, really shortened. Things that do not require low latency can remain in other cloud environments that are a little more distant, but things that have to happen very, very fast have to be as close to home as possible. That's been the approach that we took.
So that multidimensional infrastructure approach is something that you really push.
Absolutely. I think the hybrid approach is always the best way to go. Have some things local. We like to use the word glocal, so global, local, to define how we operate. Thank you.
Yeah. Around that sort of cost dimension, Mr. Adinga, how do you prioritize on the value proposition and how you see the the cost shifting over the years? Because some people say, oh, well, I went to the cloud and the cost starts to go up over time. Or so I go into colocation and it starts to go up over time, but forget the value of agility, and people relate to that in different ways.
I think in terms of cost, I think it's far better because don't forget in those days, you have to make provision for growth. And in having to, do that, you buy a bigger system. That means you have to license it. Having to license such systems, that is, you're trying to license something, you have growth of 5 years, you've bought the system that will grow, let's say 3 years, maybe not 5 years, 3 years. You have to license that system. Unlike now, you pay for what you use, which I think is a far cry to what was happening then. So you start small, you can scale up, or you can even scale down, depending. And I think that is a major advantage today. If there's no better time to be a CIO now than now, because then you have to go to board, the amount of money, it's like, why are you coming up with this cost? And that's why I said being a CIO today, I'm not saying it's the easiest, but it's easier if you're thinking of agility. It's easier to plan, and it's easier to present because, again, you're looking at what you're using as of now. You're not talking 2 years or 3 years' time. You know, you find a situation where you come to board in those days, they ask you, that you give a presentation, and it's like,
the CFO will shift. And
exactly.
Say, okay, it's
I
time
mean,
to discuss.
It's like, really, how much are we making, and why are you spending such amount of money? And be rest assured, in every meeting, everybody is eyeing you as CIO, like every profit is given to this department. I think there's no better time than now, really, and it's quite commendable. In the last few years in this country, we have tier 3, tier 4 data centers. You have ISPs that are doing very network providers. The competition is very stringent. So, and then you have various options. Then you could have layers of options, and you know, I feel it's quite an advantage today. I mean, one can go on and on about that.
Yes.
Really.
I say to a lot of CIOs or CEOs that, look, if you're in a carrier-neutral environment, your cost of switching is so low, your speed of switching is so low, you've got 25, 30, 40 carriers there, you'll reduce your cost by at least 20%. And your agility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay, so, you know, leaving the best to last, you know, to the regulatory environment, you know. Oladijo, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, local clouds, data sovereignty, data protection, and so on. How do you see that, you know, from that supervisory? Nigeria is really very progressive in regulation, and that's why you use the term supervisory, and it's understood. We have to educate quite a lot in other, say, countries that we are in around regulations, supervisory, progressiveness, and so on. So I guess one commendation there. So in that context, how have you been, you know, looking at this environment, global, local cloud capability, and efficiency?
Thank you very much. And thank you for your keynote. It reminds me when you said to speak about where you were 25 years ago, and the similarity in the industry then and now. Because 25 years ago, I remember I was in an ISP2 and we're using dial-up then, and cable, so to say, and now back to fiber. Cable, sort of, so the similarity. So thank you very much. So NICDA, yes, a regulatory agency, and first of all, what we do now when we talk about regulation from the government angle is we're not trying to stifle innovation. We're trying to allow innovation to grow, because we are trying to go away from the old feeling about government, that government is just here to kill innovation. So there are many ways you can actually regulate. There's a form of regulation whereby you can actually watch the industry from a distance, watch them grow, and if there's a need, you now come in and help them to, you know, adhere to existing laws of the country. And that is what we try to do. And if there's now a need to actually regulate, we do what we call co-creation. We do it together with the industry. We regulate together with them, and that's why we have a series of stakeholder engagements. So when it comes to the issue of cloud, what we have been advocating recently is cloud sovereignty, and there are many advantages to that. Dotun spoke about latency. That is one of the that's one of the advantages of having your data localized, because now it has actually reduced latency. However, other aspects of it is when it comes to security and data privacy and owning your own data in your own country, it's very, very key. And there's so much, I don't want to use the word, but let me just, world politics going on around owning your own data and keeping your own data with you. So what we've been doing in that area is to see those data that are critical to the country need to be in your country. For example, when it comes to areas of personal data that needs to be in the country, and some of the things that OPay does, for example, some of this data need to be in the country, because now, apart from the latency, the issue of security and the privacy of those things they're dealing with needs to be considered also. So those are what we are looking at. And so last year, we had the gathering where we had the major data center operators in Nigeria. They were there. The hyperscalers, the international hyperscalers were also there. And then those in the government that had to do with compliance issues were there to discuss and see how we can actually localize this data and let us come to an agreement how to do it. Because when you talk about different areas of compliance, like the data privacy, the Nigerian data privacy law is there, and we need to also consider that. So those are things we think about when we try to say, okay, we need to have sovereignty over our cloud. There's a great need to have it, so, and we have been trying to educate people and create that awareness, the need for it. Another advantage we could talk about is the fact that when we now do that, we are creating more business for ourselves in this country. I'll stop there for now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the more business thing is really quite important, because one thing I say is that when you build data center infrastructure, for say every $10 you spend, it could be around about $50 induced or direct impact. So a 10 megawatt data center, if it was say 100 million, some people do it for less, some do it for more, but easy math, 100 million. So the 10 megawatts could be anything from $1 billion to say 5 billion induced or indirect or direct impact. So imagine when you put cloud services into those data centers and you'd start to deliver significantly more capability, the multiplier effects are very, very high indeed. So the business is not just sovereignty, the business of the business justifies it. So on that note, I'd like to ask from the far end, and we'll talk back this way, how we see the future pan out on evolution, AI, and impact on with the things we do.
Yeah, so I feel the future is AI. I feel in future we'll have things like security as code, compliance as code, and then of course a lot of analytics. That's what I see in the future. Thank you.
I was speaking at a conference, I think last week or 2 weeks ago as well, and it was an AI conference, and were asked about how do we see the future. And so I'll just say the same things I said there, that the future is not too far off now than what it used to be. We used to think 10 years' time, 20 years' time. What AI, for instance, has achieved in the last 6 months, I'm sure that individuals here can say that 6 months ago is different from now. Just in AI capabilities, just this year alone. And so the future is not too far off again. What we would have then will then be AI-driven infrastructure, AI-maintained infrastructure. What you'll have is AI co-workers, even in your office. You have agentic AI and people that, instead of having physical persons, you have logical persons that work together with you to scale your infrastructure. So we think that service quality will overall improve. What we just need to do or need to keep doing is keep scaling infrastructure, whether they're local data centers or the cables and the network and everything that works together. That needs to keep on growing, both locally and internationally. Keep the collaboration between the global hyperscalers and the local players active, and then we'll have AI and other services run as tools on the local data centers, and it will be a beautiful future going forward. Yeah.
AI becomes part of it. It's not AI. It actually operates within everything that's happening.
So in the future, I see from going for what Dr. has said, he mentioned the hybrid way of using the cloud. So what I see in the future is, well, I see less of the hybrid because in the future, with the rates at which we're going right now, we're trying to have, we have so many data centers coming out with the scale already, growing. So there might be less of the hybrid because now the reason why we do the hybrid is to scale. So in the future, we might have the infrastructure in Nigeria, for example, and have enough and reduce the need to scale. Already we have some of these hyperscalers already trying to have their presence in Nigeria. So that's what I see for the future anyway, to grow to the point where we have so much infrastructure that the need to now go hybrid might not even, it might be fully reduced, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
I quite agree with the last speaker. I mean, I think the future is here, and also what I think would happen, which is already happening, is the resilience and agility and compliance. I think there's no reason why we're talking about fintech today, why fintechs would not be compliant. We have apart from all the infrastructure, yes, we still rely on the hyperscalers, but really we have, it might be small footprint for people like, I'm talking about my company now, Ola Systems, but at least we do have infrastructure, and of course we have a good partnership with the hyperscaler that we're using. And then it's good to also say that we have the skills here, so it's not as if you need to fly anybody in. For instance, we did a cutover for a bank without anybody knowing what happened in that bank, and it was done successfully and 100% Nigerian. So I think the skills we have, the infrastructure there, and there are quite a number of options available. And then you can also make sure that you build in such a way that redundancy help in making sure that you're available all the time. Thank you.
I find it quite, I guess, in a way humbling, the way he just said how he did the cutover for one main bank, and this was one hell of a project and amazing, and just also showed what Nigeria can do. Really amazing. So I'd just like to, prior to final thank all the panelists for contributions so far. And we'll go into question and answer. I'll suggest 2 questions, max 3. Great, thank you. And before, as that comes in, I'll just leave a thought. Agentic AI holograms. Make what you make of it.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for our panelists. So we do have a few questions here, sir. And this is directed to Nitda. And it says, many fintechs say compliance costs are rising faster than their revenues. How do regulators balance consumer protection with ensuring startups can still innovate? To you, sir. You want me to repeat the question?
No need. So, well, it's not a matter of competition between the, when it comes to issues of compliance. What we're trying to do is just to ensure that the right things are done, number one, and to create the right environment in whatever is happening, a right environment and not competitive in the sense that those that have an advantage now don't allow those others to grow, but a fruitful environment to allow startups to grow. So when it comes to the area of startup, for example, that is one of the areas where NITDA is very key on, and that is why we co-created the Nigeria Startup Act with the industry. That was about 2 years ago, I believe, to ensure that these startups have the right environment in whatever they do. So it also boils down to whatever regulation we do. I was speaking about the the national cloud policy is in a draft. A draft form is coming up now from the workshop I spoke about earlier that started last year. So all these things, we're actually looking at how to ensure that startups in Nigeria are given the best opportunities to grow, apart from things like funding, like bringing them closer to angel investors and all those things. But we ensure that we give them the right environment, and when any regulation is made, they are given the advantage, so to say. I don't know if I've answered the question properly. I hope so.
I think one thing I could sort of add to is that it's actually been done very collectively with the industry and engagement. It wasn't just done needed to the industry. What's coming out of this has been driven by a broad range of players in the industry.
All right, thank you very much. This is a question for you, sir. And it says, is there any regulation around crypto mining data center in Nigeria? Someone just sent this through. Is there any regulation around crypto mining data centers in Nigeria?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, I believe maybe that will be in the finance sector, because what we do is basically on blockchain. We don't focus on crypto per se. And you know, crypto is just an aspect of the blockchain. So what we are doing in NIDA is focusing on regulations that have to do with blockchain. The aspect that is related to the crypto, we are dealing with the Securities and Exchange Commission together. So they are more in line to do that. Thank you.
All right, keep your questions coming. We have one more here for Mr. Adenuga. Sorry, Miss Olushola Adenuga. It says, what is one misconception fintech leaders still have about cloud compliance that must be corrected before scale can happen? What is one misconception fintech leaders still have about cloud compliance that must be corrected before scale can happen?
Two things I would say there. You have to start with being compliant, and then, like it's been said, you know, it's not that expensive, you know, to not only comply, to be agile. I think there's no better time to start a fintech than now, and you have various options to be able to negotiate. So I don't see why anybody should not comply at this time.
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. And then this is to ma'am. It says, if you had to choose between a cheaper offshore cloud option and a compliant local one, how do you justify that trade-off to your board and customers? I think this is best suited to OP. It says, if you had to choose between a cheaper offshore cloud option and a compliant local one, how do you justify that trade-off to your board and customers?
Yeah, I think that the questions have actually been technically answered. My colleague from NIDA has mentioned that first, when there are latency concerns, you want to have local cloud capabilities, and the advantages that you get from having that lower latency will eventually result in business performance, and you must be able to connect the dots to the board and the chairman, whoever needs to hear that. So that's something that is important. The second area, of course, is around compliance. There are data domiciliation requirements that has been set out by the central bank if you're a fintech, and you want to comply. And the cost of non-compliance will far outweigh the cheap cost that you are trying to gain. So it's very, very important. I think it's an easy conversation to have with the board. Just use the fear factor, and everybody will be happy.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll call this session off and then just, take some photos. So please, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panelists. And then just stand up, let's take a group photo. Our photographers. and gentlemen, another round of applause for our panelists. The jargon to explore its real-world implications for innovation, scalability, resilience, and others in the Nigerian fintech ecosystem. So they'll also be sharing valuable insights, practical experiences, and their strategies that are shaping the future of cloud adoption in the sector. So I'll start with the first speaker here. And have Tolu Obiang, Head of Core Operations at Team Apt. Ms. Tolu Obiang is a seasoned business leader, strategist, and entrepreneur with deep expertise in operations, customer experience and financial services, and smart technology solutions. As Group Head of Core Operations at Team Apt, she drives operational excellence, customer success, and financial inclusion at scale with Nigeria's digital banking ecosystem. Her career includes impactful leadership at InterSwitch Group, where she led cross-functional teams, streamlined operations across multiple international subsidiaries, including Kenya, Gambia, Uganda, and Germany, and delivered measurable value through business transformation and technology integration. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Tolulokpe Obiang. Next is Obinna Adumike, Head Converged Digital Infrastructure for Africa at Open Access Data Centers. Obinna is a seasoned technology leader with a strong track record of driving digital transformation across Africa. As Head of Converged Digital Infrastructure at Africa Open Data Center, he leads the development of critical infrastructure to meet the continent's expanding connectivity demands. Prior to his current role, Obinna held leadership positions at Cloud Exchange West Africa and RAC Center, where he contributed significantly to the design and delivery of cutting-edge data center and network solutions. He's passionate about digital inclusion and innovation and actively engages with the Africa tech community through industry events and thought leadership. Obinna remains committed to enabling businesses and individuals across Africa through resilient digital infrastructure and collaborative growth. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Obinna Adumike. Next, we have Mr. Benga Paseda. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Managing Director at VFD Technologies. Benga is the Managing Director of VFD Tech Limited, a subsidiary of VFD Group, where he oversees technology management for VBank and other entities within and outside the group. With over 13 years of experience in digital financial services, product development, project management, and business strategy across various sectors such as banking, agriculture, oil and gas, and maritime services. Before his current role, Benga served as the Executive Director of Products at VFD Tech, where he scaled the company's business capabilities, including the banking as a service product, and promoted key partnerships. He initially joined VFD as a senior product manager, overseeing VBank's digital channels, including USSD, POS issuing and acquiring, card issuing, and WhatsApp banking. Prior to VFD, Benga worked at prominent Pan-African banks, including UBA Group, EcoBank, and Zenith Bank, gaining comprehensive experience in the financial sector. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Benga Paseda. Next, we have Bemisola Oshurinde, Chief Executive Officer, Smart Comply. Bemisola is the Chief Executive Officer of Smart Comply, Africa's trusted cybersecurity and compliance platform. She leads the company's mission to empower businesses with scalable AI-powered solutions that combat evolving digital threats while ensuring regulatory compliance. With over a decade of experience in information security, Bemisola blends deep technical expertise with strategic leadership. She holds an MSc in cybersecurity and management from the University of Warwick and a BSc in ICT from Covenant University. She's also certified in CEH and ISO 27001. Before joining Smart Comply, Bemisola held key roles at Inlax, Main One, CyberVigent, formerly InfoPrive, and Essentry. where she spearheaded cybersecurity strategies, risk mitigation, and compliance programs for enterprises undergoing digital transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Bemisola Oshiride. Next is Deji Lano, Chief Technical Officer, Seamless HR. Deji is a co-founder and Chief Technology Officer at Seamless HR, Africa's leading cloud-based HR and payroll technology company. He oversees product design and development at the startup, spearheading efforts to ensure superior product design and experiences across the company. Deji is versed in many programming languages and frameworks with over a decade's experience leading software projects. Before Seamless HR, he was a Chief Technology Officer at Incidify, a jobs aggregation platform he co-founded. He also has experience leading web projects at some of Nigeria's biggest banks, including the renowned First Bank of Nigeria. His personal mantra is, "Impossible is nothing," and it informs a rounded outlook on innovation and leadership. He holds a degree in material science and engineering from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife in Nigeria. Today, he is a 25-year veteran and technology leader who has seen many triumphs. Ladies and gentlemen, Deji Lana. And to moderate the session is Temitayo Jayola, Senior Reporter, Tech Cabal. Temitayo is a Senior Reporter at Tech Cabal. He's interested in stories that explore the intersection between technology and human activities. He's a data enthusiast, loves numbers, and should have studied economics. Maybe you tell us why you did not. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panelists.
I don't have a long profile, but you still clap for the panel. Please, a round of applause again for the panelists. Yeah, Tolu, so I'll be starting with you first. I like money points, and I think everybody here likes money points, right? I mean, we are probably 3 fintechs, remember their names. OPay, Pumpay, money points. How has agility been crucial to your rise?
Good morning, everyone. So there are several moving parts in doing what we do, and it's very important that we're able to scale immediately. So when things are happening, we talked about latency while the other speakers were talking. My colleague Hopi was talking, and yeah, I think largely because of things like that, going the agile approach is a necessity. It's not something that we should think about. So that would also speak to not just being on the cloud, but building within the cloud. And I'll just explain that. So a lot of us just put our small apps and whatnot on the cloud and say we're on the cloud, right? But essentially, when you're building and you build an actual product, you churn them into microservices such that when something happens, you're not doing everything, you're not making a change to everything, but you are largely just picking where it's affected and you deal with it, as against bringing down the entire system, fixing everything. You probably now have like longer downtimes and whatnot. So essentially, I think that in itself speaks to how agile we approach things. Before now, within the industry, and I'm sure a couple of us might be familiar with this, when there's a downtime, banks will probably just send us SMSs and say we'll be down for X amount of time. But if you notice, that has reduced drastically because a lot of us are now going the agile approach, which is, I don't necessarily have to bring everything down, right? What I actually need to change might not affect all my customers. It might not even affect my customers at all. It might just be an internal thing that will be down, an internal service that will be down. But I make that fix and I move on, and nobody knows. But then again, I've been agile enough to scale, to do better, and to make my systems more optimized.
A follow-up, Stu, for you. Would you say that the fact that banks started first and then they had to build brick and mortar infrastructure, that slowed them down when they had to migrate online? And it's more like an encumbrance that fintechs do not have, because you just building, you just start building, and you see in Silicon Valley, say you build first, you break things, and you just continue.
I wouldn't say that it's because banks started first. Yes, they went ahead of us, and we learned from their mistakes. The truth is, everybody that you see today, every solution, including my organization and his organization, right? We are here because we are here to bring solutions to the somewhat shortcomings of the people that were there before now. So I think that it was just a learning curve for most of us. Even the banks are now, they're there, right? So you find that some banks are even saying, I'd rather create this vertical integration within, and I don't really need you anymore, right? Some of them are thinking, oh, I want to expand. If this person can do it, why can't I do it by myself? And stuff like that. There are conversations like that. So essentially, I wouldn't say that it's because of that.
To DG, yeah. How would you say the technical landscape has changed in terms of talent? Based on your profile, you have a 25-year experience. How has that changed? Do we have, yes, we do have enough competent talent for that, but would you say fintechs are leveraging on that? And how has it changed, from your own point of view?
Thanks for that question, and I think it's vital. So I remember, like she said before, when fintechs go on the cloud, all they need is buy a container, one EC2 server, and say they're on the cloud. But that has changed, and I think one of the things in recent times that made it change would be the FX problems that we have. So when people start seeing their server costs go up, CEOs start demanding, boards start demanding, like, why is this cost going up this much? And people have to, again, sit back and look at their infrastructure. I still have a conversation like 3 weeks ago where someone is saying, I'm paying too much on this cloud infrastructure. Who can help me? And people contributed, and people said, you again have to look at your architecture. It's not enough to just be on the cloud, but you need to know how to be cloud native. Use the right, I don't want to mention specific cloud, but use the right tools for different things at different times. For example, at Seamless HR, we run end-to-end HR platform. There are several tools we use when you are running payroll. So for example, you are processing payroll for 17,000 employees, and you want it to run in few minutes. That means you need to use certain services on the cloud. But when a lot of people are doing performance appraisal, let's say 10,000 people are trying to do their appraisal towards the die minutes, like appraisal is closing tomorrow. That's when everybody wants to quickly submit their appraisal. You need to leverage the cloud, because you can't get a container somewhere and just think everybody fits 17,000 on it. You have to add more servers and do all of that stuff. So talent now has changed, because now there's now demand for people that understand cloud native frameworks, cloud native tools, unlike before where everybody can be a DevOps guy. Once you can set up something on Droplets, set up something on GoDaddy, or set up something on Amazon. But now people are now knowing about not just the concept of just cloud, even multi-clouds, trying to understand not just AWS, Azure, Huawei Cloud, and also private cloud, and how to set it up. So I think talent has improved over time based on how the demand is.
Binga, something that Dotun said about multi-cloud strategy, how you come closer for latency. But from a fintech standpoint, do you think it's a cost saver, or is it just a complex structure?
Thank you very much, Tim. I think to a large extent, right, it depends on what lens you're looking at it from. For a lot of people, it's important that, I mean, at the early days, it's maybe safer to just go with one partner, and then over time, you can get to a point where you're scaling into multiple providers. For us, when we started, we had started with one cloud provider, and over time, as we started to see some scale, I mean, it became difficult to maintain that, especially because, I mean, even considering what Deji had said, right, where you look at things from what the dollar terms were, I mean, Naira at 360 or dollar at 360 to dollar at a budget of 1516, it's a different cost, especially to business owners. How do you justify that cost? You're spending $2,000 a year. It's now become much more, right, at scale. So if you're going to talk about the complexity of your business on whether you should run a multi-cloud or you should run in a single cloud provider, it will depend on what's the size of the business, at what scale are you, and what's the cost consideration to determining what providers you should choose. But for us, when we took that decision, it was a cost conversation. It was also a matter of performance, right? Where we had been able to enjoy maybe cloud credits for a period, and then after the cloud credits had expired, right, you will think, and I speak to many fintech founders, right, especially people who are doing infrastructure. Today you're running on this, cloud credit has finished here, now you're moving to this, me, I'm not hosting things, so I don't need to, you will bear the cost. So we have those kinds of conversations, right? But there's the complexity part and there's the cost part, but ultimate decision should be performance.
Gimi, I mean, we've spoken about the good parts, but there's a security part. How crucial is embedding cybersecurity protocols from the architectural design level? I mean, because sometimes people just build first, then they figure out cybersecurity later.
That's a very good question, and I will speak to the fact that most of the time people don't actually think of putting security into the build, but after building. And because of that, it brings up a lot of complication, because as they're about to go live, they find out that there are some loopholes, there are some gaps that they need to put in place to ensure that it's good to go before they go live. So normally it's better when you start with security from the beginning, being the fact that as you're building layer by layer, you're putting the security checks in place. And that's where you have to have the DevOps guys working together with the security team, just to make sure that on every layer you have security in place. And as you're doing that, you're building and then you're able to scale up and go live immediately. The challenge with having to do the security after is most of the time you see the providers or you see clients come to you and say, oh, they want to run a vulnerability assessment and they have to go live like in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And normally for you to do a deep vulnerability assessment on solutions being built, it takes time. Being the fact that you have to break it layer by layer, you have to ensure that there are no back ends or backdoors to accessing their codes and being able to change some settings in the back end. And because of that, there's always this rush time, and at the end of the day, they are not able to meet up with the time that they want to go live with that solution. So advice is always put security in place as you are building so that you can also meet up with the timeline where you want to deploy that solution to the public to use. Another negative part of it is that when you rush it and you go live and then you find out that there are some issues, then the trust that you've supposed to have built from the beginning, you end up not having it again because your client have seen that there's a gap in your solution and they have lost that trust in that solution, and it take you a much more longer time to build that trust back. Because you see some companies, they start with a particular name, and because they've had some glitch or they've had some bridges, they had to go down and then go back and recreate and rebrand and then bring up their name again. So security is always a major thing, because security helps you with, in terms of brand visibility, brand trust, and at the same time, in terms of scalability, when that security is also there, it's easy for you to scale up with your solution because you already have it embedded, and when you have something new, placed in it, you just do another assessment on it and you're able to push it out.
Obina, you want to add something?
Yes, so I'm not a security person, but everyone in IT is, in one word or the other, a security person. You know, one of the things everyone knows, but somehow forgets when they build their project, is that the internet natively was not architected with security in mind. It was built on trust that everyone will do the right thing until someone starts to do the wrong thing, right? And I agree with that totally. Cybersecurity tends to be one of those things that cloud providers as well, not even the cloud consumers, think as a secondary offer. That's why you go, you see the adverts, you can take virtual machine, you can get EC2, all of that, you get all of that. Even when you do the training, that's all you get. And then somehow down the line, you now see a module that talks about security. And by then you are done with your project and you're like, okay, what went wrong? You try to solve that and you realize that there are things you should have architected earlier on that was never done. And I think that's actually one of the biggest issues you get, even with our local cloud providers. But I see a lot of changes happening because security comes first before the other thing.
Obina, still with you. One conversation I keep hearing anytime I'm speaking to startups about local cloud is, oh yes, local cloud, they promise a lot, but they don't deliver. They promise, yes, they say, I can do this. But we move and then we are like, and we still have to go back to the bigger guys. Why?
Okay, just like many other sectors, right? Nigeria as a cloud environment is evolving. That's the reality. So historically speaking, what happened was that when our local cloud providers, if you go back to the top local cloud providers, the earliest ones, they were owned by connectivity providers, if you look at them. Because of that, they took their experience as connectivity providers and then they built cloud models on top of that, which gave birth to private cloud being marketed as public cloud. It was a big problem as that then. So you want to buy a cloud service and someone says, give me the next 72 hours to come back to you with a virtual machine and IP address. Meanwhile, you go to the public cloud provider, you just create an account, click, a virtual machine is created for you. You can get going. It was a problem of the evolution, the history, how they all started, right? They needed to cover a gap. But I know that currently there is this change that you could see within the local cloud providers. I know a couple of them that you can actually do 100% self-service, what they call it now, sign-on and all of that, spin-off machines, and you get going. But there is still a lot of work to be done. Again, when you look at the Nigerian IT space and the cloud consumption, which basically drives growth as well, don't forget that these are business people. For you to invest, you need to also see a return on that investment. Resiliency comes with being able to create multiple platforms, redundancy upon redundancy, build back layers that allows instantaneous growth and scale up and scale down, scale sidewards and all of that. It doesn't come cheap, right? Usually, for fintech owners, my Oga, OP, MoneyPoint and all of these guys, they don't, because they build cloud native applications, multi-tenant applications, leveraging microservices, all of that, Kubernetes, Dockers, and all of that. It usually makes sense to go to global cloud providers that have all this already pre-built in their cloud application. You don't want to start rewriting codes on identity and access management where you can just download that microservices from be it Google or Azure and then embed it in your code and you are good to go. Our cloud providers are still getting there. That's a whole lot of investment in over a long period of that. And Visual Basic is literally owned by Microsoft. How old is Visual Basic? If you want to go back in history, right? So let's cut them some slacks. They will get there.
So I think this is going to be a general question, yeah? Because you said something about connectivity providers going into data center space. And recently we are seeing MTN and Airtel going bullish on the data center space. MTN wants to start selling cloud to fintech providers. Ethel says, oh, we want to just focus on AI compute. Do you see them actually changing that space? Because they have the financial backing, and in quotes, they also seem to have the technical know-how.
Personally, I am an advocate of neutral environments, open source solutions. And I know that one of the biggest fears of cloud consumers, especially fintechs, is being locked into an environment that you don't have the flexibility to move. So if I consume your cloud and my base connectivity is tied to your own network, so tomorrow, if for some reason your latency or your traffic is not doing as efficient as I want, and I now says, look, this other service provider should actually carry my traffic, even though I want to keep sitting on your cloud, you start to hear some sort of Spanish in the midst of the English, right? So that's the kind of thing that usually worries cloud consumers, which is why, naturally, can they do it? Yes, they have the financial muscle, the technical muscle. These are fellow Nigerians that work in these companies and fellow Africans. They can do it. But realistically speaking, as a person, I believe that when neutral individuals go into building cloud platforms, you're able to create a layer of infrastructure where you can have as many connectivity providers plugged in there. I don't know anyone that has gone to any of these global cloud providers and they say, look, if you don't use this particular ISP, you cannot use my service. We don't want stuff like that, right? So if I use your cloud and the baseline infrastructure is, because I know these guys usually have multiple ISPs for redundancies, I should be able to reach your cloud almost at the same latency, irrespective of the ISP I use. That is at the basics, right? If I use your cloud, I need to be able to move traffic between your cloud and another cloud platform as easily as possible without having major frictions. If I use your cloud and I probably I'm running a particular services on your cloud and I want to move that service to the next cloud, it should be seamless, right? So, but if the optics, I'm not saying is a reality, but if the optics feels that when I come to you, I have to remain with you, then it becomes a problem. Can they do it? Yes, they can do it. But we need to be able to create a neutral cloud environment that actually allows the ecosystem to thrive.
Tolu?
Okay. Can they do it? Yes, and to me, I think that it's a conversation of may the best man win, right? Like I said about banks and how they went ahead and, the expectation would be that if you want to get into that business, you're actually solving a problem, right? So it's not just for the phase of, oh, I want to have a data center, or I want to run a cloud system, or I want to run a cloud structure. If you come to me and you tell me that you are going to deliver and you're a tested and trusted partner for cloud services, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't go with you. We've talked about how the future of scaling and cloud services would eventually become a local thing, right? So if we start today, it's not a problem. If we have people coming up like MoneyPoint did with POSs and say that they are going to come and solve the problem around cloud services, I'm fine with it. Like, it reduces my cost drastically, and I'm also not going to be fighting with regulators every time, saying, are they not sensitive to my needs and all of that, right? I think everyone just goes home happy. So it's really, like I said, may the best man win.
Baby?
Yes, so I agree with the two other speakers. Yes, so it's something that they are capable of doing, but at the same time as they are doing it, I think the major thing people focus on, or that drives this narrative, is what's the challenge and what's the solution? Are you going to deliver that actual thing that we need to fix that challenge that we have? And if they can, yes, of course, people will go for it. And the other part of it is the fact that if they're also able to drive the narrative of being able to clear out the compliance part where regulations are coming behind your back, are asking you about where your information are being stored, and it's being stored locally. Because, I mean, these are players that are multinational and not just here in Nigeria, but if the information they are keeping is stored here in Nigeria, is accessible here in Nigeria, and it's also easy to duplicate them across other continents or countries that companies will be going to, of course, definitely. It's a win-win situation. Like she said, may the best man win.
Bingo. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think for me, I would look at it from two perspectives, from the business standpoint and also from the customer standpoint. From the customer standpoint, I'll look at it in terms of interoperability and portability, and maybe around that portability, we'll be looking at the ease of integration, which I think Obina was talking about earlier. It's important for whatever systems are being introduced to be interoperable, meaning that across several use cases or across several elements, you can find a way to make sure that that service meets your needs. From a business standpoint, is it their core? It's a 50-50, right? Will they be able to scale it or focus on it? It's a 50-50. They've done ISP, but I mean, this is a different ball game entirely. And then from a level playing field standpoint, where you want to make sure that you're creating more players that help to create better regulations, better decision making for the regulators, for people to choose from. I think it's a goal.
So my perspective, I agree with what they've said, and my perspective would be, and I'll tie this to the last question you asked. You asked them, Obina, that why a local cloud, not, they will promise, and when you get there, you might not. Because I think it's unfair when somebody is just starting a new cloud environment, because you are comparing them to your Azure, AWS, who have had decades doing these things. So they coming on board or building local cloud, I think the muscle is needed. If, for example, I said I want to do a cloud, I know I'm almost failed at the beginning because I'm competing with Amazon, Huawei, and also Azure. So that muscle is needed. But what I think, and agreeing with Obina, and also Benga, is the interoperability. If it's built on the CNCF framework, like the cloud native framework, that you can move from one cloud provider, MTN to Airtel, or to anyone without having to change your code base, your architecture, then that would be a very welcome idea. Then also, being able to choose what ISP you want. Again, it's a business for them, right? If they are supporting or investing in the cloud, there have to be something they are getting back. It's almost like conversations sometimes I have with banks when we are talking about payroll and we are having conversation and they say, oh, they have to be domiciled in my bank. And these people just want to pay salary and they want to pay through your platform. Why do they have to, no, I need to keep deposit and all that. So again, to these people, they want, because the reason why they are supporting is to ensure, but what I would have preferred is all of them should invest in maybe something central and put pockets of money in each of the competitors, like the cloud frameworks, or the cloud hosting provider. And if their ISP is good, that's the network, the connectivity is good, people would naturally use them as the first and use the other as the secondary. And if the secondary is also good, people will switch. So it's a competition that would drive innovation rather than closing people to one particular cloud and they are not able to move. So that's my thought. But I think it would work, and I think they are needed. Their support is needed. They have the muscle. They have the brand. I remember when MTN or Airtel announced that they are doing their cloud, about 10 different people sent it to me. Like, see what MTN is doing. Do you want to jump on board? Do you want to be? That's because they have the brand, they have the name, and they have the history for doing that. So I think they are needed, but they should just do it in a more like investing in it and not tying people or locking people in.
Okay. Thank you. Tolu? Oh, you're shocked. Yeah. To you again. Building a cloud-native platform, typically what you're offering people is speed and agility, but then there's compliance, something knocking at your door. how do you balance that? I know last year or last 2 years, it was last year, MoneyPoint ran into some compliance issues. Yeah, sorry, with the CBN, yeah. How do you balance that? Because one, customers just want speed. And sometimes regulators are like, no, we want to see that in first before you offer speed. How do you balance that?
Okay, I can neither confirm nor deny that, yes, I said it. But seriously, I think essentially we've learned from our lessons, and one thing that I know that we actively do now is compliance by design. I'm not thinking about compliance at the end. I'm building a product, and compliance is literally like the first thing. The same way I think about operations by design. After I put this product out there, I'm going to operationalize this product. It's the same way I'm thinking compliance. I don't want to finish and somebody lands me a bill, right? So to answer it straightforward, like it's just that culture that we've built internally with the developers, with the product owners, product managers. I think the entire organization, to be honest, because compliance is not something that we just leave for the compliance team or the control departments. Everybody is conscious about compliance now because we know that it can make or mar you as an organization. So compliance by design is how we go about it. What that does is I've finished building, I put the expectations of the regulators in my product. So I'm not necessarily going to affect the customer experience, right, for the product that I am launching. So I am still agile, right? Because again, I thought about it in the early stages. I'm not having to fix anything. I'm not having to bring down anything. Things are going on seamlessly and we're good.
Bingo.
Okay. I mean, totally agree. Compliance is front and center these days. At the beginning of, I'll use my own experience of our banking as a service product. We would try to get as many fintechs, businesses come to use the infrastructure, right? As we started to see some scale, I introduced a due diligence questionnaire to say, guys, who are you? Tell us about yourself. Do you have an AML policy? Do you have a vulnerability assessment that you carry out periodically? Do you do this? So progressively, we are seeing a trend where fintechs are beginning to appreciate the need for compliance. And I think some other thing that has also aided this is the funding landscape, where it's also slowed down, right? And people need to go back and rejig their strategy to see if I'm going to be here for the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years, when this funding drought is over, will I still have a business, right? So, and I'm having conversations these days where people are telling me, oh, when I try to integrate to this other bank or partner, they ask me this thing. So if you ask me, I already have it, right? So progressively, people are beginning to appreciate this, right? And from a product perspective, right, it begins to shape how you look at things, where you're not just hasting your decisions, you're not just hasting building, you're trying to make sure that you're building for the long term. You want to be able to make sure that people can relate to your product or see your product 5 years down the line and reference it. Even if you've scaled and moved or pivoted into other things, they know that you've built a system that has credibility. So yes, compliance is part of the entire product framework and the business framework.
DG?
Yeah, I agree. And while my colleague from MoneyPoint was speaking, I was just like, yes, that is it. Like, build compliance to the product. In practical terms, we can sit here and say, oh, compliance is something you should do at the beginning. But one of the reasons why I think most fintech fail faster than the traditional brick and mortar banks is because of compliance. because they want to move fast. I just want to do cross-border payments. I'm not thinking of this scenario, that scenario, what happens if this happens. I'm not even thinking of what license to get. I just know I have this technology that can move this and do this stuff. I just want to go. And that's why they move faster, but they fail because of compliance. I've worked in banks before. Maybe the one I spent the longest time was one that has the logo of elephants. And we used to play that the elephant moves slowly, and that banks move slowly. Technology-wise, I'm not talking of any other thing, please. They move slowly, and the reason why is compliance. One day they took me to the server center. It was so big, so huge. I'm like, why is this thing not on the cloud? No, there has to be a DMZ zone. There has to be this, there has to be that. Because of that, they stand strong, right? But they might be a bit slower. But fintechs, and that's the benefit of fintechs. You want to move fast. You want to deliver value to your customer as early as possible. And that similarly also happened to us. In our first 2 years of launch, we were ISO certified, we had NDPR, we did NDPR audit, GDPR audit. And one of our board members was asking, you guys are young, why are you going through all of that? I said, we are keeping the truest form of data. We are keeping people's personal data. The other side of this is this thing getting leaked, and the company is down. Like, you just hear someone's data is lost. I have to probably be rebranding or doing something entirely different. So something we did is build compliance awareness. I have people who have nothing to do with information security, maybe customer success. They are ISO implementer certified. Some of them ISO audit certified. Again, because they know it, even if you are working around it, you know the compliance rules, you know the policies, and you know what you're working around, and you can treat it as a technical debt so as to move faster, and you come back to actually fix it. So I think one thing is build this with the product. Let your team be very aware of all the compliance rules, what licenses you need, what processes you need, what might cost you into trouble, and if you are willingly, if you want to actually bypass that rule, I'm not saying you should, but if you want to, you know what you are actually bypassing, and you know when on your roadmap you intend to fix it.
So, so I have a follow-up question, and it's still around compliance and regulators. And I noticed that Nitida has left the room, so I can ask the question because it might not necessarily get anybody into trouble here. One concern that we keep having from the fintech sector, even from the tech ecosystem, is the fact that the people regulating us are not necessarily aligned with what is happening in reality. So they are still stuck somewhere, and they still want to regulate us from that place, whereas maybe the world has passed that place. How can regulators, and what do regulators need to do to, will I say upgrade? Nitida is not here, so nobody's going to get vexed. Will I say, yeah, what do regulators need to do? How do we cross that bridge? I'll start with you, yeah.
Okay.
It's for everybody.
Okay, thank you. That's a very big challenge for us. I remember when we started before COVID, sorry to the people that lost their life, but COVID was a blessing to us. Because before COVID, most of the financial institutions and all that said, according to CBN policy, SEC policy, my data has to reside within my premises. I'm like, why? So it was a fight. Like, this is cloud. We've built cloud native, but we want this application to be within this, we want to have this access. And all those things are things that are backward. You want it to be on this kind of server. And again, it's because of regulation. And it's because, like you said, they are not in tune as much as they should with, and again, with AI. I think some of the battles we are currently having with innovation on AI, what you want to do, and how regulators don't fully understand it. So, and what regulators do, sorry, I hope NIDA representative is not here. But what regulators do is, first of all, shut it down. Then let's now see how to open it up. Rather than, let's open it up and let's see where the risks are, and let's be mitigating those risks so as not to stifle innovation. What I would recommend they should do is, and when NIDA was speaking, actually, when he was speaking, I was like, I think they should work more closely with the fintechs as they are creating an ecosystem. And I think something like that is happening with the current Minister of Information and Technology. Work more closely with the fintechs, possibly even invest in them, in some of them, maybe pull a fund together, invest in some of them, so that you understand what the rules are, what their needs are, and what they are actually trying to achieve. Someone I was speaking to said, I don't think anybody wake up one morning and intend to break the rule. maybe some, but most people, especially fintechs, don't intend to. They just want to provide a solution to the customer. There might be rules along. First of all, try to understand what they are trying to do. Work with them to say, this can't be broken. This, okay, we can give you a pass for it, but this when it should be done. And develop their policies around the solutions they are trying to create. Because if compliance or rules or policy comes before innovation, it tends to stifle innovation. And that might be some of the things that might be holding us back.
Bingo.
Okay, I think innovation will always go ahead of regulation most times. We've had several conversations around can regulation go before innovation, or will it? But the reality of it is that humans are always going to look for better ways to do things. And the point of a regulator is to probably put those guardrails, right? Just so that you can make sure that people are staying within, and because it's financial services, it could lead to, I mean, people lose their life savings, it becomes really significant, right? And I say it every time that I really appreciate engineers or people that work around financial services more than someone that is doing agri-tech or something else. I mean, not shading them, right? But there's a lot at stake from my own perspective, maybe because I work within this space. But with the regulators, I know that there are white papers that are usually released, drafts, there's conversations. I know people like, I think Dr. Yele and some other people do some things with trying to make sure that, okay, the industry has reviewed. We have different forums where, and I'm a part of Fintech Association of Nigeria, where we have discussed with the government or with the regulators around making sure that whatever regulation or whatever memo is going to come out, there's been some form of engagement with the industry, right? So I know that there's still a lot of work to do. Government typically just wants to say, please, 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 people are already suffering, shut this down, right? And not compound issues. But the time it takes between that period of shutting down or trying to review could be also major, right? But it's the reality. It's always going to be innovation. Regulation will streamline, and people will find a way to make sure that they will go past that again, and then regulation will come. So it's always a moving target.
Bimi.
So I'm going to come from two aspects. So yes, innovation is key. Every business is driven by innovation, and they always want to scale up and be able to deliver to the needs of their consumers. And then the aspect of regulation, where we want to ensure that you are complying, we want to ensure that you are keeping the information safe, we want to ensure that you are not just leaving your consumers or your clients open to regulatory risk or leaving their information out there to the open to be accessed. So for innovation, yes. And the part where I want to come in is in terms of where the regulatory body and also the team involved in innovation are working hand in hand together. So there's a part of where knowledge is key. We are always learning every day. Yes, regulations have been built based on the existing norm, but there's also the future part where there are things we are not aware of, and as we are evolving and as we are innovating, it opens up and there are risks involved in it. So this is where the regulations are actually supposed to come in, analyze it and put those controls in place just to ensure that the risk doesn't leave us open-ended. So I would say, yes, innovation comes first, but at the same time, we should also think of the regulatory part of it. And the regulatory part of it is just focusing on the security part of it. And I'll come in here in terms of when you are developing solutions that you want to push out to the public, and we are saying put security in every layer that you are putting in place for that solution. It's the same thing with regulation. You are developing a solution or you are putting innovation in place, and it's not just going to be in a particular country. It's going to go across for those that have their their establishment in multiple continents or countries around, you can't say you're innovating and you're pushing that solution without putting the regulations into place, like you said. So you're innovating, but at the same time, you have to make sure that whatever regulation is tied to that innovation is also embedded in what you are doing. And it's also up to us to build that knowledge with the regulatory body, telling them that, okay, this is what we are doing. We've also seen the risk applicable to this, and this is how we see you guys coming in to assist us in putting this in place. And working hand in hand with each other, we now put the right perspective to the businesses and what they need to focus on, so that they are not being billed or fined or shutting down their particular solution or innovation that they are building, but they are working hand in hand to drive it forward and also push it forward. So that's what I'll see.
Thank you, Tolu.
To be honest, I don't think that there's anything else that I can add to what the three other speakers have said. But essentially, I think to just summarize my thoughts, it's a dance. Both parties must move, right? The regulators have to ensure that they're up to date in their frameworks, right? Their thought process around their working framework needs to change. We all know that, right? Well, like, can you just catch up with us? The world is moving fast. Move with us at that speed as well. In this day and age, we shouldn't be talking about API connectivity as an issue with, the regulators and whatnot, but these things still exist, and all of that. So, from the fintech perspective, yes, we know this is our reality with the regulator, right? You're not just going to stay there and wait for a perfect regulatory framework, as it were. You would innovate, like Benga said. You will constantly keep innovating, but have compliance as a feature. Imagine if the regulators now know that, yes, by standard, every fintech is conscious of the compliance aspect of things. There's going to be some sort of merge, right, where we are now building trust between ourselves. So the regulator trusts that we're doing the right thing. Earlier on, he said that the internet was built with, based on trust that people do the right thing. But guess what? It's not the case. But this time around, we're making a conscious effort to say that, dear regulators, meet us halfway, right? We get that these things are important, but you too, can you see the world around you? Things are moving fast. We need to catch up. It's amazing. We live in a world where Nigerian companies, fintech companies are listed in top 100 organizations in Times 100, right? It's a time to be, it's such a wonderful time to be alive. And this is based on the fact that we are still constrained, right? So imagine if we are allowed to expand and scale as much as we want to, with the regulators being our partners as against the somewhat watchdog that we think that they are. So essentially, it's both ways. Both must dance.
Thank you, Obina.
Okay. I usually don't like cutting Nigerian regulators any slack. Yes, I was at a conference in Senegal a couple of weeks ago, and all the West African regulators that were there was basically looking up to the Nigerian regulators. That's how important, or where they place the Nigerian regulators. If we are going to be call it the tech hub of, at least let's start with West Africa, there are certain things we have to do differently. Right now, what is trending everywhere is AI. AI didn't start today. You remember we had robotic process automation? Then there was, I'm not even trying to go so far away with embedded systems and all of that. And then we had the age of machine learning. The machine is done learning and is responding now as AI, right? Now, a couple of, now, these wonderful people that have put in time and effort to build all these applications, because AI is supposed to actually bring out the best of what they do. and then someone wakes up tomorrow and then walks around, builds a regulation that absolutely, in quotes, goes directly opposite of every effort they've put. And then the question is, where were you all the periods that this was trending? So I think our regulators need to be part of the trend. This is the time I expect our regulators to be sending people for training, for courses, to understand, have lots of meetings with the people that actually consume all of these things and so on and so forth, and then be realistic. For example, in the conference we had there in Senegal, people were speaking and speaking and speaking, and then someone says, look, it's not just about keeping data local. That's not the only thing about regulation. These guys have to build compliance to your country data. And then the services, if it is multinational, has to transition into an entirely new environment that have a completely different set of regulations. And then it goes to the next one and the next one and the next one. And every single country they get into shuts them down until they meet the regulations. So at what point are we, at least as Nigeria, as the giant of Africa, our regulators need to start looking beyond how do you roll out a new licensing model and get them to pay? It has to go way beyond that. Our regulator, if we keep a regulator, someone that is an expert in that field on this stage, he should be able to educate us of what that technology is about. Because it's on the back of that technology that you built a regulation about it, around it. People open ChatGPT, Cloud, the Google own, and so on and so forth, and literally pushing their personal data in there. Your private data, you push it into AI. What do you think would happen? There is no amount of security you want to build around that. Because ChatGPT was there, you put in your personal data. The data you put into AI is as secure as what you told in a marketplace and said, don't tell anyone. So how do you build regulation around that? By understanding how AI works, as an example. And our regulators need to be there, need to be part of that process, need to be part of that learning curve, and then be able to put out regulations that actually favors and drives, protects the country. We're never going to take that away. National security is important. No one would ever play with that. But again, you cannot stifle growth on the back of regulation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so jam-packed. So we're now at the end. I'm not asking any question again, don't worry. Totally, you're fine. But like, in one word, what's the future of cloud native in one word? I will start with Deji. I won't start with you first. Just one word, yeah?
I'll say innovation.
Okay. You've taken it from some people, it's fine.
Yeah, you're taking it from me. But I would add resilience.
Okay.
Scalability.
Speed.
Flexibility.
A round of applause for this wonderful panelists. I think we'll be taking questions. Do we have time for questions?
How are you tailoring offerings for fintechs that start lean but need to scale to millions of users quickly?
Okay. I keep trying to not talk about my company, but I think that question really hits the nail on the head. So what we've done, first of all, we are a data center company and a connectivity business, like you saw my boss, Ayotunde Koka, present earlier. So what we have done is that we've built a baseline on the infrastructure level. So our data center is 100% uptime, designed with all the necessary availability technologies in it, high availability, active components, all of that stuff that goes with building a resilient data center. On top of that, we've built an ecosystem where all cloud providers, both local and international, can actually sit. In fact, we have one of the largest ecosystem of local cloud providers, and then we have a growing number of global cloud providers. We actually host the Google Equiano submarine cable in our facility, and then create access on all the other submarine cables in our facility as well. Then we now built what we call the open access fabric on top of that. So when you talk about multi-cloud environments, that's actually specifically why that was done. So that if we have our cloud providers connecting into OA fabric, you don't have to worry about, can I hop between ISPs? Because these ISPs are already pre-plugged into the OA fabric. If you want to go from one cloud provider to the other, that migration is actually easy. And because it's the base layer of everything, infrastructure. So as a cloud consumer, you are really not worried about, is this cloud platform available? Just to be clear, we don't provide the cloud platform itself. Our partners in the data center own the cloud platform, but we give them those baselines that they need to actually make their services available. And we now design using OA Fabric to integrate into each and every single one of them. And by the way, before you clap for me, which you will do after this, it's not something new. We didn't invent all of that. What we did was that we looked at the best of the technologies out there, brought it together, and then make that work so that we don't have to have these issues around here. Yeah.
Thank you.
You
Are there
didn't do
any
the
more
clapping.
questions?
Come on, clap for me.
So at this time, we will be rounding up today's event. I'll just quickly call on Temitope Oshirinde to give us the closing remarks, and then we'll break out for a time of networking.
Thank you. All right, so we've come to the end of this session, CloudReady Nigeria Breakfasts. I want to thank everyone for your valuable insights, the speakers that just left, and then to the speakers on the first panel. It was really insightful. Was it impactful for anyone? Did you learn anything? That energy is low. Did you learn anything? Great. So I think it was the same for us. And then the fintech industry is innovating and evolving very rapidly. And of course, it's conversations like this that make us as an ecosystem, as a country, stay ahead of the curve, innovate responsibly, and scale smartly. As we close out, please, there's going to be a small networking session. There is some refreshment served. Please wait. Look out for someone you have wanted to engage for a while. Reach out to them. We look forward to your future CloudReady Nigeria events. Until then, thank you, God bless, and safe trip back to your destinations.